Hi, everybody. This is Jennifer J. Thanks for tuning in again to Moving Forward. This is a YouTube channel that is very unprofessional, but is being done because God called me to do it. So I'm so thankful that you've tuned in. If this is your first time tuning in, you might want to go back. This is our third series, or third in a series. So you might want to go back and watch the first two. I promise they're not very long, about 15 minutes each. So if you want to go back and catch up with the story before you watch this one. For those of you that have been tuning in every day, I thank you for coming back again to hear some more of the story. And I hope that you will pray about it before you watch, because there's something in this that's for somebody. I don't know who's watching today that needs to hear a word from God, but God isn't having me do this for fun. There's a reason and a purpose, and He's got a plan, and it's not a coincidence that you're tuned in today. So I just hope that you will be ready to hear Him when He speaks, and write it down. Man, I got 3 of these. Write it down. You got to write down what He's telling you, because you'll forget, and you'll doubt, and you'll question, and it's really good to be able to go back and go, no, don't believe the lies of the devil. The enemy is going to lie to you. That's what he does. You have it written down. You remember what he says, and don't forget. So yesterday, I stopped at Maisha Wright, her Facebook post, and she said, move as if you don't have time, right? So that's going to have to be spliced, I think. Let's pick it back up here. So yesterday I stopped at Maisha's post that said, don't make an assumption that you have more time. Move as if you don't. And so we're going to pick it up there. That was on December the 13th, okay? So that's when I looked up at the ceiling. I said, God, I hear you loud and clear. And so then the very next day, I started planning a trip to see my bestie and my co-director from Back to School Bash, Raquel. Hi, Raquel. I know you're watching. She lives in Albuquerque now. And so I was making a plan to go and see her for the weekend. I just really had been feeling super overwhelmed by all this information God was giving me so quickly and telling me to move, and like my life was in this just upheaval of not knowing what's happening. And you guys, I didn't tell you that I bought a house. So October 1st, I bought a house. And so now I own a house in Kansas. So it's not like I can just leave a rental and go, like now I own a property. So it's really confusing why God's now saying, now I want you to leave. But it also reminds me of Joseph and Mary and Jesus. When they left because Herod was after Jesus to kill him, right? And the angel said to leave. And they left, but then Herod's son went into power and it still wasn't safe. And so then in a dream, he's told to go to Egypt. So it's like he was told to leave, but then he was told to go somewhere else. So I'm probably butchering that, you guys. We're going to have to look that up in the Word and see exactly what it says, but I hope you know what I'm referring to. And that's what it made me think of, is like, well, yeah, now I bought a house, but now he's saying to go this way. So, like, I don't know why, but he's got a plan. I do know that. So I planned to go to Raquel's, and she was going to be off work Thursday through Monday. And so that was the perfect time for me to go. My job is very portable, you guys. I work from a laptop. So we work in 48 of the 50 states, and I can work basically as long as I have the internet. I can work from anywhere. So it wasn't going to be a vacation for me because I couldn't afford that, but I was going to go to Raquel's and work. And I would have the weekend with her and evenings. And so I drove to Albuquerque. And while I was there, Raquel and I are a lot alike, scary, a lot alike. But there are some differences. And one thing is, I am an early riser. and she is not so much an early riser. And so I was up at like 6:30 in the morning doing my Bible study. Well, I wasn't actually up, I was still in bed, but I was awake and I was on my phone doing my Bible study. And so it was an Advent Bible study, and it was almost Christmas. So it was the story about the shepherd boys being in the field. And I really should have looked this verse up for you guys too, so that you would have it. But it was about the shepherd boys being in the field and cut, because I'm going to go find that verse. It's going to be in Matthew. Okay, so we'll pick it back up here, splice back in. 3, 2, 1. So in Luke chapter 2, verse 8, it says, "Now there were in the same country shepherds living out in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them. And they were greatly afraid. Then the angel said to them, 'Do not be afraid, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which will be to all people. For there is born to you this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be the sign to you. You will find a babe wrapped in swaddling cloths, lying in a manger.' And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God, and saying, 'Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men.' So it was, when the angels had gone away from them into heaven, that the shepherds said to one another, 'Let us now go to Bethlehem and see this thing that Let us now go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has come to pass, which the Lord has made known to us.' And they came with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the babe lying in a manger." They came with haste. And you guys, so that's what I read. And the application that day said, when you hear a specific word from him, trust his direction. He will equip you to do what he's asked you to do. Stir your faith today and decide in advance that you'll move when God says to move, no matter what. You guys, I was so overwhelmed when I read that. I went and woke Raquel up. She wasn't real happy about that at 6:30 in the morning, but she got up and she read it, kind of rubbing sleep out of her eye while she read it. And then she looked up at me and she said, "Wow." And I said, "Yeah, I gotta go." And she said, "Bye." And she went back to bed. And I packed my suitcase and I was out of her front door by 7 a.m. I drove 6 more hours to Arizona. I got a hotel. I spent the night. I got up the next day. I did a couple of things. So traffic would be really bad first thing in the morning, so I didn't go straight to OCJ Ministries, but I called my boss, and it's 7 o'clock in Arizona, but it's 8 o'clock in Kansas City. So I called my boss and I said, do we have any partners out here in Gilbert, Arizona that I could go visit? So that's where my hotel was. So he said, "Yeah, here's a couple, I'll send them to you." So I went, and the first one was not there. It was, the Monday before Christmas. They were closed. And the other one, there was some people there, and I got to talk with them, and they had a big office. So I actually got invited to come back and do a seminar for them. So that was fun. And downstairs from their office, there was another mortgage company. So I went in there and picked up 3 more new people, 3 new partners. So that was great for business, right? I was out hobnobbing and networking and doing what I need to do, hustling. And that was all good. And I decided it's time. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to head to Phoenix. Phoenix, about a half hour away, not very far. And so I get going and I get there, and it looks like it's a storage unit. Like I'm coming up from behind the back of it, and it has those great big, silver garage door things. And I'm like, oh dear, is the address that they have in there just like for a storage unit, and it's not a real address for their ministry, or I've pulled the wrong address or something. But I drove around, excuse me, I drove around and parked in the front, and there were actual storefront doors. And there were like 4 doors, but they had 3 of them. So it says closed. Very clearly the sign says closed on the front door. But I don't stop there. I go ahead and I'm pulling on all the doors. I'm trying all the doors. And I could see a light on in the back in one of the buildings or one of those units. And so I thought maybe somebody was back there working even though they were closed. So I'm knocking on the windows and I'm trying to raise somebody to hear me and come out and help me. There was nothing, you guys. So finally I give up. I get back in the car. I text Raquel and I told her, you know, they're closed. I don't know why I'm here. And I think she sent a frowny face or a thumbs down or something like, don't know what that's about. But then I talked to God. I know I should have talked to him first, but I didn't. And I just said, God, so do you want me to wait? Or that's all the further I got in my thought. A car pulled up, didn't park right beside me, but just one space over. And so I got out of my car. I walk around. I'm gonna cry, you guys. She gets out of her SUV and I said, are you with OCJ Ministries? And she said, yes, I am, but we're closed. And I said, I know, but I don't know what you've been praying for, but God just sent me 1,200 miles to be here. So here I am. And she said, well, come on in. So she opened the doors. She took me in. She showed me the entire facility. She opened suitcases to show me how they pack them and what goes inside. She told me about the cell phone ministry. She talked a little bit about their budget, their staff, their offices, their volunteers, all 17 ministries that they do. She told me a lot of information. She spent a lot of time with me. I still don't know why she was there. She said that they had closed on Friday and wouldn't be open again until the first week of January. But there she was, right when I was. So then she leans up when she's done, you know, giving me the tour and we've talked and everything. And she leans up against the counter and she said, so, are you ready to move? You guys remember those are the words in the very first sermon that Pastor preached. Are you ready to move? Well, it turns out at my church we had done, it was a building campaign, right? And we had made a commitment card of what we were going to give for the building campaign. And when you did that, and then they were passing out t-shirts, and the t-shirts were rolled up and tied with a little string. And I had never opened mine. I had tossed it in my luggage because it was in my drawer, still rolled up, I know. But I had put it on that morning, and what it said was, ready to move. So when she said that, I was just like, wow. Now, and try not to cry. I left there. I didn't even leave right at first. I got back in my car and I texted Raquel, oh my goodness, you're not going to believe what just happened. Like I'd been in there for an hour or so. And I just couldn't believe that God had just sent me there, and then he had just sent her there, and then it just blew my mind, you guys. So Raquel told me, I headed back to Raquel's then and was back that night, and she said, you've got to make a timeline. She said, you're going to forget what's happening. And we did this with Back to School Bash, and I knew she was right. And so I did. That's why I started these books, and I have 3 of them now. But I started a timeline, and God had told me that I needed to start preparing, so I sent my resume to OCJ Ministries. Tammy was the person that I spoke with there. She told me that there was a woman that was taking her state boards to become a nurse the end of March, and she would be leaving. She had a full-time position there, and she was going to be leaving. So I thought maybe this is what God wants me to do, right? I don't know. I wasn't feeling him call me to that, but as humans, we try to make the connection, right? We try to figure it out. And so that's what I was thinking. So I thought, I've got to tell my kids what's going on. So I did, one at a time, sit my kids down and tell them. And I was shocked at their responses because I was really scared to tell them, especially the two that live here, because, you know, I have a son that lives in Hawaii and he's very far away and I miss him terribly. But he and his wife don't see me every day. Like, they probably don't care if I live in Kansas or Timbuktu because they're in Hawaii. So they're not going to see me regardless of where I live, you know, very often. And so he told me, go for it, Mom. Do what makes you happy. Gave me his blessing. I told my daughter that lives here, she's 19 and she has autism and it's high functioning, but I was nervous to tell her because she has meltdowns sometimes and some issues sometimes, and she was so thumbs up. Go, Mom, I want to see you happy. It's about time you'd be happy. And, you know, because I was excited. I'm excited about what God's doing. I'm excited that he's using me for something, and something big, and I don't even know what, but I can feel it coming, and it's coming fast and hard, and she knew I was excited, and she just said, go. And she's not going to go with me. She's always lived with me. She's going to stay here. And so that was good. So then I told my other daughter, and she's got 3 of my grandbabies. And I thought, this is going to be really hard. And, you know, she is such an understanding person and so kind. Sarah, I love you so much. I love all of my children, but when Sarah said this, it just really touched my heart. She said, Mom, as a child, I want you to stay here. I want you to choose me. But as a parent, I know that you can do all your things for your kids and you can become a shell of yourself. And I don't want you to be a shell. Go be a person. It was the sweetest, most kindest words of wisdom for my own daughter to be saying back to me. And it's not that I'm not choosing you, baby. I'm just choosing God, which is, I know what you want me to do. And so then last but not least, I was going to tell my oldest son, Eric, and that I was telling him last because he was going to be the most difficult for me to tell. The reason that was going to be most difficult for me is because, and I am going to cry, you guys, I'm so sorry. His whole life, I felt like I let him down so many times, in so many ways. And I felt like I was just letting him down one more time. So I had him come over. It was New Year's Eve. And I told him all the things, everything up to this point that I've told you. And he said, Mom, I'm going to tell you a story. He said, I woke up one day. He said, I was laying in bed. My eyes weren't open. I wasn't even really awake yet. And God said to me, go read to somebody in a nursing home. And he was like, what? Like, that's a strange thing to think. And he shoved it out of his brain, but it kept coming back for a few days. So he finally asked his wife, who do we know that lives in a nursing home? And they knew someone that I also know from our church at LifeSpring. And so he called her adult son and he said, I need to come read to your mom. And they made a plan to go read, and it didn't work out. Something came up, or someone was sick or something, and so they rescheduled it. So then when they rescheduled it, they had something come up again, something else happened, and they had to reschedule it again. And Donovan said, you know, Eric, you don't have to do this. And Eric said, oh, no, Donovan, I do have to do this. You don't understand. So they scheduled another date, and they went, and they saw Donovan's mom, Linda, and Eric read some passages to her, and then he turned to Psalms and he read some more. And one of the things in that psalm was that God has not forgotten you. He remembers you. And she started crying. And she said, "You see my Bible up there by the TV. I haven't opened it in a week because I thought God had forgotten me." And this day happened to be her late husband's birthday as well. So she felt very comforted that her late husband and Jesus had come to comfort her and remind her that she was not forgotten and give her strength. And Eric could have ignored that call, but he didn't. And I'm so glad because she and Donovan were, and him too, but they were all so blessed by that. And he said, "I tell you that story, Mom, to say you got to do what God says." My child that I was so afraid to tell because I was so afraid that I was letting him down again. I wasn't going to be available again. And he's giving me his blessing. You guys, that was another confirmation that I got from God that I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing what he says. I'm following where he's leading. And it was just a real confirmation to my heart to hear him say that. And for all my kids to be so understanding. And Destiny, you know, she needs me so much, and yet she was just like, "I'll be fine, Mom." And you guys, I gotta quit crying and look down at my notes so I can see. Oh gosh. That Sunday at church, Pastor Rick said, "Be bold, be courageous,